Dr. Marina Voss pressed her palm against the transparent, aluminum viewing port, watching the endless expanse of ocean stretch toward the horizon 7 kilometers below. The morning sun painted the water in shades of gold and turquoise that would have been beautiful, if not for what lay beneath those deceptively peaceful waves. "Still can't believe it's all gone," whispered her research partner, Dr. James Chun, as he joined her at the observation deck of Sky City Poseidon. "Every continent, every mountain range, all of it," Marina nodded, her reflection ghosting across the surface of the port. At 35, she had been born into this world of floating cities and endless ocean, but the older generation like James, those who had witnessed the Great Submersion, carried a different kind of weight in their voices when they spoke of the lost world below. "The children don't even remember solid ground," she said, watching a group of young maintenance workers in their floating suits perform routine hull checks on the city's underside. They moved with the fluid grace of dolphins, completely at home in their aerial environment. To them, this is just how the world is. James pulled up a holographic display showing the current ocean depth readings. The numbers glowed blue in the air between them, 11,247 meters at their current position. Nearly 7 miles of water where once the Tibetan Plateau had reached toward the sky. "Sometimes I wonder what we lost down there," he mused. "Libraries, museums, entire cities with all their stories. And sometimes I think we gained something too," Marina replied, gesturing toward the bustling activity beyond the port. Sky City Poseidon was home to 50,000 souls, its interconnected platforms and towers rising through the clouds like a vertical metropolis. Gardens grew in impossible spirals around central cores, powered by fusion reactors, and tended by atmospheric processors that had turned the very air into fertile ground. The communication panel beside them chimed with the familiar tone of an incoming priority message. Marina touched the activation pad, and Director Yuki Tanaka's face appeared in the holographic field. "Marina, James, I need you both in deep survey immediately. We've detected something unusual." The urgency in Director Tanaka's voice was unmistakable. In the 40 years since the establishment of the Sky Cities, very little could be called truly unusual anymore. Humanity had mapped the ocean floor with quantum sensors, established mining operations at the deepest points, and even begun limited archaeological expeditions to recover artifacts from the sunken civilizations. "On our way," Marina replied, already moving toward the transport tubes that would carry them through the city's arterial system. The Deep Survey Center occupied one of Poseidon's lowest levels, suspended just 100 meters above the ocean surface. As Marina and James arrived, they found Director Tanaka studying a three-dimensional holographic map that showed the ocean floor in exquisite detail. The Mariana Trench, now called the deepest scar, glowed with sensor readings. "Show them," Tanaka said to her assistant, Dr. Sarah Kim. Sarah manipulated the display, zooming into a specific section of the trench. "This appeared 6 hours ago," she said, highlighting an anomalous structure near the deepest point. The object was pyramidal, roughly 300 meters at its base, and it pulsed with a soft, organic light that no known deep-sea phenomenon could explain. "Volcanic activity," James suggested, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. "No thermal signature," Sarah replied. "No geological disturbance. It just emerged from the sediment, as if it was waiting." Marina stepped closer to the display, studying the pyramid's geometric perfection. The structure's angles were too precise, its proportions too deliberate to be natural. "How we try to communicate with it." "That's just it," Tanaka said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We haven't tried to communicate with it. It's trying to communicate with us." Another manipulation of the display revealed the electromagnetic signature emanating from the pyramid. The pattern was complex, mathematical, and clearly artificial, but more importantly, it was directed upward, through the water, through the atmosphere, and out into space. "It's broadcasting," Marina breathed. "For the past 4 hours, Tanaka confirmed. And 3 hours ago, we detected the first response." The holographic display shifted to show a view of space around Earth, dotted with the familiar orbital platforms and atmospheric processing stations that helped maintain the Sky Cities. But there, at the edge of the sensor array's range, New contacts appeared, dozens of them, approaching from the outer system. Ships, James said. But whose? That's what we need to find out. Marina, I want you to lead a deep dive expedition to the pyramid. James, I need you to coordinate with our orbital defense network. Whatever these ships are, we need to be ready. Marina felt her pulse quicken. Deep diving to the ocean floor was dangerous under the best circumstances, and 11 kilometers down into the unknown was far from the best circumstances. But the scientist in her was already racing with possibilities. How long until the ships arrive? She asked. At current velocity, approximately 60 hours, Sarah reported. 2.5 days. Marina looked at the glowing pyramid in the display, then at the approaching fleet of unknowns. Somewhere in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that these two events were connected in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. I'll prep the Nereid for immediate departure, she said, referring to the city's most advanced deep-sea exploration vessel. If we're going to make contact with whatever's down there, we'd better do it before our visitors arrive. As Marina left the Deep Survey Center, her mind was already racing through the preparations needed for such an unprecedented dive. Behind her, the holographic pyramid continued its patient broadcast into the void, and somewhere far above, ships from an impossible future continued their inexorable approach toward Earth. The Nereid descended through layers of ocean that had once been sky, its hull groaning softly under the increasing pressure. Marina checked the depth gauge, 8,000 meters and falling. Outside the reinforced viewing ports, bioluminescent creatures drifted past like living stars, their bodies adapted to the crushing depths that had claimed the world's land masses. Hull integrity holding steady, reported Dr. Alex Restrepo, the expedition's engineer. Fusion drive operating at optimal parameters. Marina nodded. Her attention focused on the sonar readings that showed the pyramid growing larger with each kilometer of descent. Through the ship's communication system, she maintained contact with Sky City Poseidon, floating far above. Nereid to Deep Survey Control. We're approaching the 10,000-meter mark. Target is now visible on direct sensors. Director Tanaka's voice crackled through the comm. Copy that, Marina. Be advised, the electromagnetic signature from the pyramid has increased by 30% since you began descent. It appears to be responding to your approach. Marina exchanged glances with her two other team members, Dr. Chenwei, a linguist and communication specialist, and Commander Elena Vasquez, a former military officer who now served as head of Poseidon Security Detail. Elena had insisted on joining the mission personally, arguing that first contact protocols required experienced personnel. Response to our approach, Chenwei muttered, studying the pattern analysis on his console. The signal is definitely structured. Mathematical progressions, prime number sequences. This isn't random. Could it be automated? Elena asked. Some kind of beacon left by the old world. Marina considered the possibility. Before the Great Submersion, human technology had been advancing rapidly. Climate engineering, deep-sea mining, even experimental time displacement research. But nothing in the historical records suggested anything like the pyramid they were approaching. Depth, 11,000 meters, Alex announced. Approaching the deepest scar floor. Through the viewing port, the pyramid became visible as more than just a sensor reading. The structure rose from the sediment-covered ocean floor like a monument to impossible geometry. Its surface wasn't stone or metal, but something that seemed to shift between states, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, always glowing with that organic inner light. My God, Chenwei whispered. It's beautiful. Marina had to agree. The pyramid possessed an aesthetic that was both alien and familiar, as if it had been designed by minds that understood human concepts of proportion and beauty, but interpreted them through a different lens entirely. Nereid to Deep Survey Control, Marina reported. We have visual confirmation of the anomaly. Beginning detailed scans now. As Alex maneuvered the Nereid around the pyramid's perimeter, their sensors revealed details that the orbital scans had missed. The structure's base was inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and flow like living text. Mathematical equations morphed into linguistic patterns, which in turn transformed into star charts showing constellations that didn't match any known stellar configuration. It's like it's trying to teach us something, Chenwei observed, recording the flowing symbols. Look at this sequence. It's showing us mathematical constants, then linguistic structures, then... Wait. The symbols had shifted again, and now they showed something that made Marina's heart race. A detailed map of Earth's solar system, with orbital trajectories marked for planets that match their current positions precisely. It knows where we are, Elena said, her hand instinctively moving toward the weapon at her side. And when we are. 2,400 hours until the fleet arrives, Marina reminded them. Whatever this thing is trying to tell us, we need to understand it before then. As if responding to her words, the pyramid's glow intensified, and a new pattern appeared on its surface. This time, the symbols were clearly depicting spacecraft, sleek vessels with familiar design elements that made Marina's pulse quicken. Those designs, she breathed, they're based on our technology. What advanced? Evolved. Chenwei was frantically recording and analyzing the display. The mathematical progressions suggest technological development over time. Significant time. Centuries, maybe millennia. The pyramid's message shifted again, and this time it showed something that defied explanation. Earth itself, but not the water-covered world they knew. This Earth had continents, mountains, forests, but the land masses were in the wrong positions. The star patterns in the sky were different, and the cities that dotted the surface used architectural principles that seemed to blend their own Sky City technology with something entirely other. An alternate Earth, Elena said quietly. That's what it's showing us. Marina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the deep ocean around them. Or future Earth. One that developed differently. The communication system crackled with an urgent message from Deep Survey Control. Nereid, we're detecting massive energy buildup in your vicinity. The pyramid's electromagnetic signature is off the charts. Around them, the water itself began to glow with the same organic light that emanated from the pyramid. The Nereid's instruments registered energy levels that should have been impossible at this depth, and the symbols on the pyramid's surface were moving faster now, cycling through sequences that seemed to be building toward something. It's preparing for something, Alex said, his hands moving across the controls to keep the ship stable in the increasingly energetic environment. Marina made a decision that would change everything. Chenwei, activate our translation protocols. Full spectrum analysis. If this thing is trying to communicate, I want to talk back. Marina, Elena warned, we don't know what we're dealing with. This could be our only chance to understand what's coming. Marina interrupted. Do it. Chenwei initiated the communication array, sending out a structured response based on the mathematical patterns they had observed. The pyramid's reaction was immediate and dramatic. The glow intensified to almost blinding levels, and the symbols on its surface froze in a configuration that seemed to pulse with meaning. Then, impossibly, a voice spoke through the water itself, transmitted directly to the Nereid's communication system. The voice was human, but speaking a variant of English that had evolved beyond their recognition. Travelers from the before time, the voice said, its words somehow conveying both immense age and urgent hope. We greet you across the streams of possibility. Your world line approaches the convergence point. The fleet comes to offer sanctuary before the final dissolution. Marina's hands trembled as she activated the response system. This is Dr. Marina Voss of Sky City Poseidon. Who are you? What is the final dissolution? The response came not in words, but in images projected directly into their minds. They saw Earth, their Earth, in the final stages of transformation. The oceans that had claimed the continents began to evaporate, leaving behind a barren, airless rock. The sky cities fell one by one as the atmosphere processors failed and the fusion reactors exhausted their fuel. Humanity's last survivors fled to the stars, searching for new worlds to call home. But they also saw another path, a timeline where the Great Submersion had been prevented, where different choices had been made, where humanity had learned to live in harmony with their planet instead of being driven from it. That Earth, the Earth of the approaching fleet, had prospered and grown, developing technologies that allowed them to navigate between timelines, seeking versions of themselves that had not been so fortunate. We are your descendants, the voice continued, from a line of possibility that still remembers solid ground. We come to offer you a choice: remain in this dying timeline and face extinction, or join us in a reality where Earth lives. Marina felt the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on her like the crushing depths outside their hull. Around them, the pyramid continued to pulse with light, a beacon calling to ships from a future that had never happened, offering salvation to a present that was running out of time. Deep Survey Control, are you receiving this? She called into the comm. Director Tanaka's voice came back strained and urgent. Receiving, Nereid. And Marina, the fleet has just accelerated. They'll be here in 18 hours, not 60. Whatever you're doing down there, they're responding to it. Marina looked at her team, seeing her own mix of wonder and terror reflected in their faces. They had sought to understand the pyramid's message, and now they carried knowledge that would reshape humanity's understanding of reality itself. But understanding and choosing were two very different things. Sky City Poseidon had never seen such activity. In the 18 hours since the Nereid's first contact with the pyramid, every citizen had been awakened and informed of the situation. The city's great assembly hall, usually reserved for quarterly governance meetings, now buzzed with the voices of 50,000 people trying to comprehend the impossible. Marina stood at the central podium, still wearing the pressure suit she'd worn during the deep dive. Around her, holographic displays showed the approaching fleet, now clearly visible as massive vessels that dwarfed even the largest sky cities. Their design was unmistakably human, but evolved far beyond anything their own civilization had achieved. The entity in the pyramid claims to represent humanity from an alternate timeline, she explained to the crowd. A timeline where the Great Submersion never occurred, where Earth maintained its land masses and developed along a different technological path. Director Tanaka stood beside her, his face grave. Our orbital sensors confirm that the approaching vessels are emitting energy signatures consistent with technology centuries ahead of our own. But more importantly, they're showing no hostile intent, no weapons arrays, no defensive postures. They appear to be refugee ships. A voice from the assembly called out. Refugee ships? From what? Marina took a deep breath. This was the part that terrified her most. According to the entity, our timeline is approaching what it calls final dissolution. Our Earth, this flooded world we call home, is dying. The oceans will evaporate, the atmospheric processors will fail, and our fusion reactors will exhaust their fuel within the next few centuries. The assembly hall fell silent. The revelation that their world had an expiration date struck like a physical blow. Commander Elena Vasquez stepped forward. The entity offers us a choice. We can remain here and face extinction, or we can join them in their timeline, a reality where Earth survived and thrived. But how is that possible? Demanded Dr. Sarah Kim from the Deep Survey team. Traveling between timelines? Chin Wei activated a holographic display showing the mathematical models they'd extracted from the pyramid's communications. The entity showed us equations that describe reality as a branching structure, infinite timelines spinning off from decision points. Their technology allows them to navigate between these branches, but only at specific convergence points. And we're at one now, Marina continued. The emergence of the pyramid, the approach of the fleet, it's all synchronized to take advantage of a moment when the barriers between timelines are thinnest. An elderly woman in the front row raised her hand. Marina recognized her as Dr. Elizabeth Harper, one of the last surviving witnesses to the Great Submersion. What about our world? Our cities? Our lives here? It was the question Marina had been dreading. The entity was clear. If we choose to join them, we leave this timeline entirely. Sky City Poseidon, all our settlements, everything we've built, it would continue to exist, but we wouldn't be part of it anymore. The implications rippled through the assembly like waves. Families would have to choose together, or be separated forever. The civilization they had built in the aftermath of the Great Submersion would be abandoned for the promise of a better world, one they had never seen and might not be able to adapt to. Director Tanaka activated the main communication system. We're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel of the fleet. They're requesting permission to approach and establish communication. Marina nodded. Put them through. The holographic display shifted to show the bridge of the lead vessel. The figure that appeared was unmistakably human, but changed in subtle ways. Taller, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and eyes that held depths Marina couldn't fathom. Most striking was the way the figures seemed to exist partially outside normal space, occasionally becoming translucent, as if not entirely anchored to their reality. "Greetings, survivors of Timeline Kappa 7," the figure said, their voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly in the listener's bones. "I am Commander Zaravas Chun, descendant of your own Dr. Marina Voss and Dr. Chen Wei, speaking for the Temporal Rescue Fleet of the Earth Coalition." Marina felt her knees weaken. In the crowd, Chun Wei stumbled backward, his face pale with shock. "We come from Timeline Alpha, and Commander Voschin continued, where the Great Submersion was prevented through the development of quantum atmospheric stabilizers. Our Earth thrives with 7 billion human souls living in harmony with nature. But we have detected the approaching dissolution of your timeline, and we offer sanctuary to all who would accept it." The assembly erupted in voices, questions, fears, hopes, and desperate pleas for more information. Marina raised her hand for silence, then stepped closer to the holographic display. "Commander, forgive me. This is difficult to process. You claim to be our descendant, but from a timeline where different choices were made." "Not just different choices, Dr. Voss. Your choices. In our timeline, you didn't just discover the pyramid. You created it. The Marina Voss of Alpha 1 developed the quantum beacon technology that allows communication across timeline boundaries. She sent the pyramid here as a gift to her other selves, knowing that someday they would need a way home." Marina's mind reeled. In another timeline, another version of herself had achieved impossible breakthroughs and reached across reality to save them. The weight of that revelation was almost crushing. "What guarantees do we have?" Elena Vasquez demanded, her military training keeping her focused on practical concerns. "How do we know this isn't some elaborate deception?" Commander Voschin smiled, an expression that held both sadness and hope. "Because you are us, Commander Vasquez. In our timeline, you became the first director of temporal defense, protecting Earth from incursions by hostile timelines. Your skepticism is not only understandable, it's necessary." The commander gestured, and the display showed images of their Earth. Vast continents covered in gleaming cities that blended seamlessly with restored forests, oceans teeming with life, and massive structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. It was beautiful beyond imagination, but also alien in its perfection. "We offer not just sanctuary, but partnership," Commander Voschin explained. "Your timeline's experience with the Great Submersion gave you insights that our timeline lacks. Your Sky City technology, your atmosphere processing systems, your knowledge of survival in hostile environments, all of this would be invaluable to our civilization." Director Tanaka stepped forward. "And if we refuse, what happens to our timeline?" The commander's expression grew somber. "Your timeline will continue on its natural course. The dissolution will occur in approximately 200 years. Some of you may find ways to extend that timeline, perhaps even escape to other worlds. But ultimately, this version of Earth will become uninhabitable." A young voice called out from the assembly, one of the maintenance workers Marina had seen earlier. "What about the people who can't leave? The sick, the elderly, those who are too frightened to go?" "The transition is possible for anyone," Commander Voschin assured them. "Our technology can accommodate any physical condition, any age, any level of preparedness. But the choice must be made by each individual. We will not force anyone to leave their home." Marina looked out at the assembly, seeing the faces of people she had lived and worked with for years. Some looked eager, excited by the possibility of a new world. Others appeared terrified, clinging to the familiar despite its limitations. Many simply looked overwhelmed by the magnitude of the decision. "How long do we have to decide?" she asked. "The convergence point will remain stable for 72 hours, Commander Voschin replied. "After that, the barriers between timelines will solidify again, and another opportunity may not arise for decades, if ever. 72 hours to make a decision that would affect the entire future of their civilization." Marina felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders like the pressure of the deep ocean. "We need time to discuss this among ourselves," Director Tanaka said. "Can we reconvene in 12 hours? "Of course. We will maintain position and monitor the timeline convergence. But be aware that the longer you delay, the more energy the transition will require." Early acceptance means safer passage. The transmission ended, leaving the assembly hall in stunned silence. Marina looked out at the 50,000 faces staring back at her, knowing that each person carried the same, impossible burden she did. In 72 hours, they would either remain in their dying world or abandon everything they had ever known for the promise of something better. And, somehow, the choice would define not just their own futures, but the very nature of what it meant to be human. Dr. Chun Wei hadn't slept in 36 hours. His laboratory in Sky City Poseidon had become a hub of frantic activity as teams of scientists, philosophers, and social theorists worked to understand the implications of the temporal choice before them. Holographic displays showed probability matrices, cultural impact assessments, and psychological profiles of the population's response to the unprecedented situation. The mathematical models are consistent, reported Dr. Kim as she reviewed the quantum mechanics data provided by the pyramid. The timeline navigation technology appears to be legitimate, but the energy requirements for transporting 50,000 people across dimensional barriers would require more power than our entire civilization produces in a year, Chun Wei finished. Which means either they're lying about the feasibility, or their technology is so far beyond ours that we can't even comprehend it. Marina entered the laboratory, carrying a cup of synthetic coffee, and looking as exhausted as Chun Wei felt. Any progress on the linguistic analysis? That's where it gets interesting, Chun Wei said, pulling up a series of communication fragments. The entity in the pyramid and Commander Voschan aren't just speaking evolved English. They're using linguistic structures that suggest their entire cognitive framework has changed. They think differently than we do. Differently how? They use temporal grammar, verb tenses that describe actions across multiple timelines simultaneously. They have pronouns that refer to alternate versions of the same person. Their mathematical concepts include dimensions we don't even have names for. Chun Wei paused, rubbing his tired eyes. Whatever humanity became in their timeline, it's not just technologically advanced. It's fundamentally different. Marina considered this as she watched the activity around them. Other sky cities had been contacted and were facing the same choice. New Geneva had already voted to accept the temporal transition. Sky City Mumbai was still debating. Floating Tokyo had declared the entire situation an elaborate hoax and cut off communication with the fleet. Dr. Voss, came Director Tanaka's voice over the communication system. Please report to Command Center immediately. We have a situation. Marina and Chun Wei exchanged glances, then hurried through the city's transport tubes to the Command Center at Poseidon's highest level. They found Director Tanaka surrounded by displays showing activity around the pyramid, 11 kilometers below. It's becoming more active, Tanaka explained. Energy output has increased by 400% in the last 6 hours, and we're detecting new structures emerging from the ocean floor around it. The main display showed a real-time feed from their deep-sea monitoring stations. Around the original pyramid, smaller structures were rising from the sediment, geometric forms that seemed to be assembling themselves from the matter of the ocean floor. They're building something, Marina breathed. Not building, corrected Dr. Alex Restrepo, who had returned from the Nereid expedition and was monitoring the construction process. Growing. The structures are using some form of programmable matter that responds to quantum fields generated by the pyramid. Commander Elena Vasquez pointed to a tactical analysis on her screen. The new structures form a perfect geometric pattern around the pyramid. If I had to guess, I'd say they're creating some kind of transition platform. Marina studied the displays, feeling a growing sense of urgency. They're preparing for mass transport. This isn't just about communication anymore. They're building the infrastructure to actually move us between timelines. The communication system crackled with an incoming message from Commander Voschan aboard the temporal fleet. Her image appeared in the holographic display, but she looked different now, more solid, more present in their reality. Dr. Voss, Director Tanaka, she said, we've begun construction of the transition array. As the convergence point stabilizes, we can provide more direct assistance. But I need to warn you, we've detected temporal disturbances that suggest other timelines are becoming aware of the convergence. Other timelines? Elena asked sharply. Not all versions of humanity made benevolent choices, Commander Vasquez. We've identified at least 3 hostile timelines that view convergence points as opportunities for conquest rather than rescue. They're already moving toward your position. The implications hit Marina like a physical force. Not only did they need to decide whether to abandon their world, but they might not have the luxury of making that choice peacefully. How long until these hostile forces arrive? Director Tanaka demanded. Our best estimate is 18 hours. Less if they're willing to risk unstable transitions. Marina felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. Somehow, she had become the focal point for humanity's most crucial decision. Commander, what would happen if we chose to fight? To defend our timeline rather than abandon it? Commander Voschin's expression grew grave. Your technology is impressive for your development level, but the hostile timelines possess weapons that can unravel the quantum structure of reality itself. Fighting them would result in the immediate dissolution of your timeline, not in 200 years, but in days. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just choosing between their current world and a better one. They were choosing between salvation and annihilation. There is another option, Commander Voschin continued. We can begin partial transitions immediately. Essential personnel, children, those most willing to adapt. They could be moved to our timeline now, while we continue to hold the convergence point open for others. Marina looked around at her colleagues. Dr. Kim had gone pale, realizing that she might need to choose between her elderly parents who were terrified of the transition and her young daughter, who was eager for adventure. Director Tanaka was staring at displays showing the other sky cities, knowing that as a leader, he would be expected to be among the last to leave. How many can you take in the first wave? Marina asked. 10,000, safely. More if we're willing to accept higher risks. 10,000 out of 50,000 from Poseidon alone, and there were 37 sky cities across the globe. The mathematics of survival had suddenly become terrifyingly personal. Marina made a decision that surprised even herself. I'll go. Every head in the command center turned toward her. Chenwei looked shocked. Marina, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she said firmly. If I'm going to ask people to abandon everything they've known, I need to prove that it's possible to survive the transition. Someone has to be the first through the door. Commander Voschin nodded approvingly. Dr. Voss, in our timeline, you were indeed among the first to volunteer for dangerous explorations. Your courage is consistent across realities. Director Tanaka stepped forward. If Marina goes, I'm going with her. As leaders, we need to verify that this transition is what they claim it is before we ask others to follow. Elena Vasquez shook her head. Terrible tactics. If both of you disappear into another timeline and don't return, it will cause panic. One goes, one stays to report back. Marina looked at her friends and colleagues, realizing that these might be the last conversations she ever had with them as they were now. If the transition was successful, the people she spoke with in the alternate timeline might be similar, but they wouldn't be the same individuals who had shared her life for decades. Chenwei, she said, I want you to continue the linguistic analysis. Try to understand how their society functions, what we might be walking into. Dr. Kim, work with Alex to prepare the transition facility data. Elena, coordinate with the other cities. We need a unified response. She turned to face Commander Voschin's image. I'll volunteer for the first transition, but I want to be able to communicate back to our timeline, to report on conditions in yours before others make their choice. That can be arranged, the commander replied. Dr. Voss, prepare yourself for temporal transition in 6 hours. And thank you for your courage. In our timeline, you're remembered as one of the founders of multiversal human civilization. It appears that heroism, like cowardice, is consistent across realities. As the transmission ended, Marina felt a mixture of terror and excitement that reminded her of her first deep-sea dive years ago. She was about to embark on the most dangerous exploration in human history, not into the depths of the ocean, but into the depths of possibility itself. Around her, Sky City Poseidon continued its daily routine, but she could feel the change in the air. In 18 hours, hostile forces from alternate timelines would arrive to fight for control of their reality. In 6 hours, she would step through a doorway between worlds and become the first person in their timeline to see what humanity could become. The only question was whether she would live long enough to report back what she found.